share to your wider network of. Oh, there we go. We're starting. So as I said, we're here to talk about the Culture Night Late Funding Award 2026. We will be recording this session, so we're going to run straight through the presentation. We have the chat function, so if a question comes up throughout the presentation, kind of pop it in the chat, and then at the end of the presentation, we'll stop recording and we can have also questions in the room, hopefully. So as I said, please feel free after this event to share this recording with your wider networks of kind of partners of organizations and artists. And obviously we're here. We're here to kind of answer any questions from now until the deadline. So thanks, Emer. So we'll just kind of get started then.
Sorry with the.
That's okay. That's great. So next slide. So this is the local place and public art team. We have, I've kind of listed all our emails there, and we'll share this presentation with you after. We also have a team email address, which can often be the best choice because it's all three of us have access to it, and that's local@artscouncil.ie. So there they are. So it's myself today. Suzanne Ring is here, and hopefully we can get her in just with some technical difficulties we're having, and Emer Kelleher is here as well. So hopefully we'll get through this now. So yeah, next slide, Emer. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at a few, because obviously this award sits within the broader Culture Night. So I'm going to take you through some of the insights we have from last year, and also some insights on the Culture Night Late Award in 2025. I'm going to just pull out a few case studies that might be relevant to you. I think one thing about this award that has really struck me, this is my, I think, second or third year now being across it, is how kind of adaptable and flexible it is. And there's really a huge variety in, the type of events that you can program under this award. So I've just pulled out three. There's also obviously many more you can look at as examples. So again, as I said, we're looking here at Culture Night as a national event. And as many of you know, it's grown substantially over the last number of years to become a really kind of massive event that over the past 5 years has engaged just over 1 million people each year across both in-person and online events and engagements. Culture Night obviously is delivered locally by local authorities, so we work in partnership with local authorities and many other organisations and individuals across the island to deliver Culture Night and develop it, I guess, crucially, that's our role. Culture Night Late is presented by the Arts Council, and it's been in partnership with the Department of Culture, Communication and Sport under the Nighttime Economy Task Force. So one thing I would say that's really important, and I go into it again, is to understand, I guess, the context in which this is happening. So it's interesting to see the work that's been happening across the Nighttime Economy Task Force, and specifically, the Nighttime Economy Advisors in the field of kind of promoting late night events. Yep, so next slide. So here are just some statistics. So each year Culture Night gathers a huge amount. We engage in quite a large survey of event organizers, coordinators, artists, and also audiences. So we get some really interesting insights. Last year, we actually had, it was just over 1,800 events, and they took place across 6 cities, 172 towns, and 49 rural locations. So 2025 was really interesting in terms of how Culture Night was programmed, in that it saw a trend away from towns and urban locations to more villages and rural locations for Culture Night. So that's really interesting to see those kind of trends, I guess, year on year. Talking about flagship events, so Culture Night Late in 2025, 84% took place outside of Dublin. So that's really important, to the Arts Council as the national development agency for the arts. And overall audience satisfaction with Culture Night, kind of remained pretty steady at 90%. So next slide. So, what's interesting, and obviously this is of huge interest to you as producers, organizations, artists, is to look at some of the insights we've been capturing around Culture Night and artists. 98.9% of artists would recommend to fellow artists that they get involved in Culture Night. And again, I said 90% of audiences would also recommend. Here we see an interesting slight incremental raise. 55.3% of artists were directly commissioned to produce and present work for Culture Night. 85, almost 86% of artists agree that Culture Night introduces their work to new audiences. And 50% now agree that participation in Culture Night is financially worthwhile. And that saw an increase of 10% on 2024. And I guess crucially, just 17% of artists surveyed disagreed with that statement. So next slide, Emer. I just want to say I'm so happy I'm not the one sharing in this term. So thanks, Emer, because it's very stressful. So now we're going to look at Culture Night Late as a whole, and Culture Night Late Award, or projects funded under this award, are only part of the story. So we have the Culture Night Late Award, but we also have, as I was saying, the nighttime economy events through the nighttime economy pilot towns. So overall, taking into account that, and obviously there are kind of standalone events that just are programmed to take place. And when we talk about late night, we're really generally talking about events that start after 9 p.m. and end from 11 p.m. onwards. So overall, there were 193 late night events in 2025, and that represents 11% of all Culture Night Late events. There were 13 standalone nighttime economy events programmed and produced by nighttime economy pilot towns and advisors. And here we're talking about, when I say flagship, those are the events with funding through Culture Night Late. And this year they were held across 14 counties, and that's an increase on last year. And these events combined had an audience of over 10,000 people. I'll talk a bit more about Strand 1 and Strand 2, but 7 were funded under Strand 1 and 12 were funded under Strand 2. So next slide, Emer. So here we're looking at this is overall events, obviously not just the late night events by primary genre. Sorry, there's a spelling error there. So the majority of events would fall under performance. Now, the majority of this was music, performance, music, and visual arts. 19% involved arts, craft, or skills and would be classed as participatory. 18% were heritage or history or Irish language, and 6.5% were other sports, science, food, etc. So what's interesting about some of the late night events is we have seen a couple that would, obviously the kind of core pillar will be an arts event, but some of them would have those kind of auxiliary events that might fall under some of the other categories. Sorry, Emer, next slide.
Sorry, Katie. Can you hear me there? I just have
Yeah,
to pause the sharing at
yeah.
the moment. Yeah, just for one moment. Sorry. Our captioner just needs a little assistance. Okay, thank you. And I'll start the presentation again.
Yeah, we can
Sorry,
move on. Yeah.
sorry, Katie, can you see that slide?
I can see it. Yeah.
Brilliant.
Here are just some impacts that we have observed or seen from Culture Night Late. They added a huge visual and experimental impact to Culture Night, what would be called I guess, the wow factor. What's really interesting is obviously how these awards activate and use outdoor spaces safely and innovatively. So we will see in a lot of the projects kind of year on, year out, that their spaces maybe not commonly used for arts activity, and they're kind of activated for culture night. And this in turn will attract, quite a wide and diverse and often intergenerational audience, which is exciting. They prove that there's an appetite for contemporary events on Culture Night. And in some areas, the flagship events were the only events that were taking place past 9 p.m. And they encouraged all areas of the community to come together, regardless of age, gender, or socioeconomic background. And next slide, please. So here are a couple of events that stood out last year. If I'm looking for different examples that might be of interest to you. So Culture Night, sorry, Emer, I'm going to need that one up while I talk through it as a prompt. So the first one to talk about was the Dock in Carrick Shannon, and they had a really interesting event. So it was an example of someone who had an ongoing, I guess, program aimed at young people around essentially kind of DJing and producing. And they took that as a starting point and ended up producing an all ages late night event that had a number of different elements, kind of appealing to, like I was saying, a very diverse audience. So there was a mixture of kind of traditional dance. So they had Irish Shanos, they had a Zimbabwean dance. They also had an Irish language tour of their gallery, and it ended with a late night techno house party. So that was a really interesting one. Douglas Hyde Gallery, and there's actually an interesting video that the Culture Night kind of comms team produced on this project that you can find. And they worked with artist Bill Harris to produce Miss Powder Vacuum. So it was a following on from the alternative Miss Ireland. And it was an interesting, I guess, example of how a venue or gallery, could work, deep in a relationship. They had an ongoing relationship with this artist, and it also kind of formed part of their audience development strategy for the gallery. So they used this award in a really kind of innovative way, and it was a really exciting event that I think sold out. In probably a matter of hours or minutes. So that's an interesting one to look at. Drea Art Centre, again, they have a really active nighttime economy advisor there, and this kind of formed part of events they had been testing throughout the year. So they program night moves. And what was interesting about this, and certainly for an art centre who might be thinking about kind of applying under this award, it was the art center who applied, and there were events, that took place in their space, but it also activated a large number of spaces outside the art center itself. So I think when I was doing a tally, I think there were 15 venues that were kind of noted. So this was a really interesting model, to see how an art center can use it kind of in their own space and use it obviously for developing new audiences, but can also activate community spaces. Okay, Emer, you can go on to the next one now. So now we're just going to go into the guidelines. So Culture Night Late is designed to support events that will begin after 9 p.m. and continue late into the night or the early morning on Culture Night, which this year will take place on Friday, the 18th of September. It has been offered in partnership with the Department of Culture, Communications and Sport under the Nighttime Economy Task Force to offer audiences a greater diversity in their Culture Night experience late into the night and to encourage more inclusive and innovative late night arts events suitable for a range of audience types and ages into the future. Yep, next slide. So here, just a couple of slides around understanding, and this is advice for any funder you might be approaching, is to kind of understand the strategic context into which you're making this award. I've listed a few, so this will be the last year of making great artwork. The Arts Council's 10-year strategy, and you'll also see obviously paying the artist is another kind of core consideration across all of our funding now, and our equality, human rights, and diversity strategy. I would say as well, look up the Department of Culture, Communications and Sport, as it's now called, its report on the Nighttime Economy Task Force, and have those, I guess, as the overarching context to, when you're writing your application and you're framing it for the Arts Council. So next slide. Again, there's a number of strategic priorities of the award, and you're not necessarily going to hit, all of these, but this is the core of what, I mean, you are going to hit all of them, but I guess these are the kind of core. And you might be kind of using it primarily to look at kind of maybe innovative programming models for your organization or venue. Not all of them are looking to younger audiences to the same extent. Your focus might be more on an intergenerational audience, but these are things that you need to kind of have beside you as you're framing your application. Sorry, I'm just having a lot of pop-ups here. So the first is obviously public space. And again, you'll see this through the Nighttime Economy Task Force report. And this is the importance of accessible shared places and spaces and how they are or can be used for the engagement of the public through the arts. So again, this is very broad. It can be a park, a street, a town square. We saw a lot of this. Projects can use also local businesses. So the Night Moves project used a number of kind of cafes and restaurants. It could be public buildings or spaces that are not ordinarily used for the arts. But of course, this needs to be done with due consideration for permissions and noise curfews as they apply locally. At the core of all of our funding as the Arts Council, it's artistic excellence. So we're looking for high quality, ambitious, and a collaborative approach for excellent arts activities in any or multiple art forms or practices. And you would see quite a lot of kind of interdisciplinary or multidisciplinary proposals through this award, which is really exciting. So again, looking for innovative and unique events. So it's looking for something that maybe Culture Night is an opportunity, and this funding is affording an opportunity to maybe take some risks and look at some, testing new ground and exploring maybe some arts activities across multiple art forms that, could inform future programming and also open you up to new audiences. Again, looking at younger audiences. So when I talk about looking at we talk about the audience for Culture Night and we talk about, how many people engage, younger audiences, 18 to 24 in particular, are ones that are not, I guess, engaging in Culture Night, representative to, their proportion of the population. So we are looking for proposals that can reach that kind of cohort or that age range. And so, whether it's through what you're programming, obviously the partners you have and maybe their track record engaging that audience, we are looking at that. Next slide, please. Again, and we'll say this, loads of times, partnership is the core of this award. You cannot, your application will not be eligible if you don't have the involvement of a local authority they deliver Culture Night, we need them in this application either as a lead partner or a supporting partner. Public engagement and inclusion. So we want to see, and again, going back to our equality, human rights, and diversity strategy, we want to see that the applications have core considerations around access, equality, diversity, and inclusion as per our strategy, and address some of the challenges specifically outlined in pages 12 to 13 of the report of the Nighttime Economy Task Force. Here again, I mentioned the paying the artist policy. Now, Suzanne is here to take over on the next slide. That's fantastic. I'm sick of hearing myself. So Suzanne, if that's okay, I might just finish up the slide and then I can hand over to you.
Yep, that's fine.
All right. Supporting artists, we want to see that you are adhering to best practice in the payment of artists as per our policy. But in addition to that, I think thinking about it more broadly in terms of artists' conditions, pay and working conditions, and also ensuring due consideration is given to working with artists with disabilities. And we have specific access funding that you can apply for those supports as well. We will need to see that you have secured financial support. We won't be the kind of sole funder of any of these applications. And this can be, we're asking that it's a minimum of 25% of your total cost for this event. And that can be a mixture of cash or in kind. And we'll go into that a bit further. Events, obviously, because it's Culture Night, they need to be open and free to the public. You can have ticketing, and most of these events do or require it, or a number of them do. You can have ticketing and pre-booking arrangements in place, but they must be free. And again, because it's Culture Night late, they need to commence at 9 p.m. or later and continue late into the night. So I'm going to stop talking now and I'm going to hand over to Suzanne. So thanks, Mel.
Hi, everyone, and apologies. I was having technical issues there getting in. So as Katie has just been talking to you. Sorry, Emer, can we go on to the next slide, please? Very much. For the Culture Night Late programme, there are 2 strands in 2026, similar to 2025. So the first strand is Culture Night Late flagship events. So these are really kind of the large scale, as it says, a flagship event for your county with an audience capacity of at least 500 people is what we're looking for. The maximum you can apply under strand 1 is 16,500. And just to note, as a kind of a theme that we will keep repeating during this webinar, is each application must have the support or be made by the local authority. So just to note, under strand 1, each local authority arts office can only submit 1 application, either as a lead applicant or as a supporting partner. So there's only 1 strand 1 application from each local authority arts locality permitted. And then if we go on to the next slide, Emer, please. So then strand two, again, we're looking for innovative late night events for a unique audience experience, again, beginning after 9 p.m. And in this instance, the audience capacity has to be at least 200 people. The maximum you can apply for under strand 2 is between 5,000 to 8,000 euro. And again, each local authority arts office can only submit 1 application as a lead applicant under strand 2. Differing from strand 1, local authority arts offices can support additional applications under strand 2 as a partner, but this should be clearly documented in the application and with a supporting letter outlining the nature of their support. Okay, next slide, please. So again, once you're making an application, it's really important to understand if you are eligible to apply as the applicant. So the award is open to local authorities, including Ealaín and Gaeltachta, arts festivals, arts centres, production companies and arts organisations only. And the lead applicant must be either the local authority arts office or one of the arts organisations festival production companies noted above. And again, you know, there's more detail that you can find about the applicants, but we won't go into all of that. But please, I would say, read the guidelines and understand how your application is relevant and what you need to do to be eligible for submission. Next slide, please, Emer. Again, as well as understanding who is able to apply, it's also very important to understand who can't apply and if you're not eligible to apply. And again, we're reiterating that all applications must be made in partnership and involve a local authority arts office, either as the lead applicant or as a project partner. And again, whatever this relationship is with the local authority arts office, it should be documented in your application. Next slide, please. So what you may apply for. So the maximum amount of value that you can apply for under Strand 1 is 16,500, and the maximum you can apply under Strand 2 is 8,000. This award will cover 75% of the costs, and the remainder of the costs, at least 25%, should be matched by yourself and the other project partners. And this can include in-kind support from your project partners. So there are a number of kind of criteria here. Again, I won't go through it, but you know, it in the guidelines, it outlines what is eligible expense and expenditure that isn't allowed to be covered under the costs that you include for this award. Next slide, please. And again, just a note on in-kind support. In-kind support is, you know, if you are expected to receive in-kind support, you really need to be putting a financial value on it so that the contribution can be made to the real value of your proposal. And it should be seen as both expenditure and income. So whatever you include on one side, you should also declare on the other side as well. Next slide, please. Again, and it's very important to kind of include a note here on artist pay, and we would refer you back to the Arts Council policy on pay the artist, so that you have information on the fair and equitable remuneration and contracting of artists. Next slide, please. Access costs for artists or participants with disabilities. We're committed to making our funding schemes and the work we fund as the Arts Council accessible to everyone. And to meet this goal, we offer financial supports to remove barriers for artists and participants with disabilities, and these are known as disability access costs. So the description of disability that we use is taken from the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, together with the relevant Irish legislation and case law. But just to note, we broadly include all people with disabilities, for example, people with physical, medical, cognitive, intellectual, learning, emotional, or sensory impairments. And as I'm sure you're very well aware, there are two types of disability access costs that you may need to consider for your application: personal disability access cost and audience disability access costs. The Arts Council provides separate funding for personal disability access costs in addition to your core budget. However, you must fund disability access costs for audience from within your core budget. Next slide, please. So these supports should help you to remove barriers for artists or participants with disabilities who are delivering your proposal. And while we list a number of examples, these are not exhaustive. And just to note that you can apply for personal disability access costs in addition to the maximum amount available for the award. So under Strand 1, if you do have personal disability access costs, these would be in addition to the 16,500. And similarly with Strand 2, these would be in addition to the 8,000 that you can apply for. Next slide, please. And just to note that if you are including disability access costs in your proposal, you must upload a document listing these costs with your supporting material. There's an optional template available in the payments templates page on the Arts Council, and you must show two separate lines on your application form: a line for personal disability access costs and a separate line for audience disability access costs. And whether you use your own document or the Arts Council template, the two types of disability access costs must be shown separately. And similarly, as in with any other budget information, the more information you can provide and the more clear and clarity you can give us in that submission, the better it will be towards making a decision on that. Next slide, please. Again, there are a number, while we say what you can apply for under this award, there are a number of items that you're not allowed to apply for. And again, I would really recommend that you read this and understand this section of the guidelines, making sure that you're not including costs in your application that wouldn't be eligible under this award. And again, we're just reiterating the fact that under Strand 1, each local authority can only be involved in one application, be it as a lead partner or as a partner or organisation to another organisation. However, under Strand 2, local authority offices can submit one application as a lead applicant and also support additional applications as a partner. Next slide, please. So again, we have in the guidelines noted both costs and activities that you may not include for under the award. So we would just draw your attention to this information. Next slide, please. So really, really important to note is what supporting material you must include with your application. It's really important because the supporting material, in addition to the application, gives that kind of wholeness to your application. And when the panel are making the decisions, they have as much information as possible as part of that decision-making process. So what you're required to have is a statement or a letter of support from each of the participating partners or performers outlining their permission and what they're hoping to their expectations and commitment to the project. A detailed budget listing all items of income and expenditure relating to your proposal. This is really important. And again, it really helps the panel at the decision-making process if you can give as much information as possible in this detailed budget, including CVs and profiles of all the artists involved, examples of previous large-scale productions or presentation by the partner organisations. If you're getting any other financial support, including benefit in kind, again, or sponsorship, a letter outlining and confirming this arrangement should be included. And also noting health and safety compliance and guidelines is to be included as well. And we can't reiterate enough, if you do not submit the required supporting material, your application will be deemed ineligible. And none of us want to be making applications ineligible because a piece of supporting material has been missed. We know how much time and effort you put into completing your application. So please double check that you have all the required supporting material before you submit your application. Next slide, please. And again, there are certain circumstances in which you are also required to submit additional supporting materials. So again, if you're seeking additional access costs, there's requirements around that. If your proposal involves working with animals, working with children and young people, or working with vulnerable adults, there are additional requirements in terms of supporting material. So please refer to this in the guidelines and make sure you submit as required. Next slide, please. So I'm going to hand over to my colleague Emer, who's going to take you through the practicalities of making the application.
Hello all, apologies now, my camera seems to be acting up, but I'll just go through the application process for the award. So you will be able to log in directly from the website. Also, there are some helpful links which we can send on to you. So it's just listing the funding page, so you can download the guidelines and application form. And it's also important to note that If you're opening a new account, please give a couple of days to open and get access to online services because it can take a couple of days to set this up. If you have any accessibility requirements, you can contact our accessibility officer, Vanessa Carswell, at this address. And if you have any technical questions, please contact online services. You can also contact us at the email previously mentioned, local@artscouncil.ie. So just common pitfalls. Please don't leave it too late and make note of the deadline. And as Suzanne mentioned, not uploading all supporting materials, so please check the guidelines for these documents. Also, please read the objectives of the awards and please include local authority support. And our general advice is give yourself plenty of time and ideally submit 48 hours in advance, just in case there's any technical queries that we need to help you with. Several people will be involved in making a decision about your application, so please be clear as possible. And there's some more helpful hints there, so don't assume that the assessors will know you as an applicant, so give as much information as possible about your partners and your work. If you have support or support in kind, then make sure it's properly noted in your letters of support. And budget amounts must match across the application, and always relate your proposal back to the award's priorities and objectives. It's a good idea as well if you have someone that could read through your application just before you submit, just to give you any notes or feedback that might be helpful. So the assessment process, the applications are checked for eligibility, and then the eligible applications go forward for assessment under these 3 criteria, which is artistic quality, meeting the priorities of the award, and feasibility. Where relevant and or required artistic assessments requested from the other art form teams, applications are recommended as shortlisted, not shortlisted, and then sent to a peer panel for scoring and final decisions. Applicants will be informed of the decision in writing, and decisions are sent to council for noting. We expect to be sending out letters about 10 weeks from the date of application. So thank you all for attending today, and if you have any questions, please do put them in the chat, or there is an option as well to give you the option to speak here. So I'll just hand over to Katie as well. Thank you, and thank you, Suzanne.
Thanks a million, Emer and Suzanne. And apologies again for the technical difficulties. You're all very patient. So just seeing if anyone has any questions. Obviously, you can always get in touch with us, following on from this as you're starting to fill in your application. You have all of our details, but it is an opportunity if you wanted to ask something now. I think if you raise your hand, if you want to kind of come in with a question, I think Emer can, kind of turn on your audio. Otherwise, I don't see anything in the chat, I don't think. Oh, something's come up.
There's a few questions coming in.
Great. Oh,
Katie, so I can read them out.
brilliant. Yeah.
So from Emma Dwyer, can the audience be 500 people over the course of an evening or in various venues?
I guess the answer to that is yes, that's certainly how some of them work. Certainly, where you have events that might take place across a number of venues, we would include each of those venues. Or, some people might be staging something, more than once in the same location. We're really just looking to get, you to demonstrate that you're reaching that number of people and that your event will have, that scale of an impact.
Thank you. And another comment in terms of the 2025 Culture Night events by primary genre, are these reflective of just what has been funded previously? or is the proportional representation reflective of the Arts Council priority for funding?
So sorry, that probably did create some confusion when I showed the primary genre. That was for all of the 1800 events. So for this award, obviously this award we wouldn't fund, heritage or craft. We are funding arts events, so it would be a different figure then. I would say for the most part the majority of them would be kind of cross art form. They would have more than one, but we can look to provide that information post this event. But again, for the Culture Night Late Award, it would be for arts activity. So it would be the majority would obviously be in that first category.
That's all the comments in the chat. Thanks, Katie.
Oh, great.
There's just another question there, Katie, in from Steve O'Toole. Will there be a specific separate call out for other culture night events, i.e. before 9 p.m. slots with smaller audiences?
Exactly. I think the official call begins from the 1st of May. Again, the best thing for you to do if you are thinking about kind of culture night as a whole and maybe organizing an event is to get in touch with your local arts office. Because we tend to try. So how the structure of Culture Night works is we have a national coordinator who manages the Culture Night website, and we try to get all the information on the different open calls then, and they'll be up on the website. But some of them kind of happen maybe earlier than May. So what I would suggest you do is get in touch with your local arts office to see what the timing of their call and what they have planned. Well, I think if that's all the questions, I guess I'm just left to say very best of luck with your applications. If you're making one, it's always a really, really exciting award to kind of be a part of and to see. So I really look forward to seeing what comes in. And again, in the meantime, as you kind of digest this, you might be sharing this presentation, like I said, with your kind of own networks and partners, and questions might come up then. Just please get in touch. Really just to say, reiterate a couple, I guess, of kind of main points is to remember, like a lot of Arts Council awards, we're not the Arts Council, like this team, we're not the primary decision makers here. It does go to a panel of your artist peers, and you really want to kind of give yourself the best chance. Like we want to see things go to panel, and I think it's really just spending time on those kind of supporting letters, spending time on the supporting documentation, making sure that you have, a clear budget, that your proposal will be understood by that panel. So I think that's really one, and obviously giving yourself as much time as possible. I think what the Arts Council, what our kind of ICT or online services team says is that if you kind of run into a problem and it's after 2 p.m. on the day of the deadline, they can't guarantee that they can help you. So really just trying to kind of see that you're ideally even trying to submit your application the day before or the morning of, I think would be the best. I mean, ideally, 48 hours ahead of the deadline. I know absolutely from experience, personal experience, that's not always possible. But I think those are just maybe two things to kind of leave on because we want everyone to be able to give themselves the best chance possible. So that's me finished. If there aren't any questions, we might say goodbye. And again, just get in touch if there's any kind of issues or problems as you're putting together your application. And thanks very much.